Welcome to No Strings Attached, the podcast where Pilates meets pop culture, unexpected connections, and the conversations you didn't know you needed. Today, we're stepping into a world of tiaras, talent rounds, and perfectly poised posture, pageants, and Pilates. What do these two have in common? More than you would think, from core control on the stage to the mental resilience needed to perform under pressure. Pilates and pageantry might just be the ultimate crossover with a lot of similar stereotypes as well. So whether you're here for the glitz, the gossip, or just curious if Pilates could be the secret to winning a crown, let's dive in. I'm joined by my fabulous friend Ella Baker, Miss Earth 2020, Miss Universe finalist, and current Miss Supranational 2025 finalist. We're going to dive into the world of pageants, explore what they really involve, and figure out what the crossovers really are. Right. So let's talk pageants.
Yes. So hi everyone. Like Lauren said, my name is Ella. I am by this point, terrifyingly seasoned pageant. I'm not going to say expert because that would be a total lie. But pageantry is one of those things that it's really what you make of it.
I remember when we first met and you just entered your first pageant, I honestly had my reservations. But one of the reasons I wanted to invite you on is because just through seeing how much you enjoy it, how happy it genuinely makes you at your heart, I mean, I'm convinced. But we are going to be discussing a few of those stereotypes and maybe my audience's reservations as well, and maybe similar to mine in the beginning. Why don't we just start, since it is a Pilates podcast, is there any fitness or physical training? Since we are drawing the parallels as well, it might be interesting to sort of know if that is in any way kind of an aspect of your training.
Absolutely, and I fully remember those reservations. Everyone had them. Like, everyone was like, Ella, what are you doing? And I was like that as well, but I think actually by doing it, I've really learned and developed myself and learned what pageantry truly is. For me, yes, there is a physical element and a fitness element based in my pageantry training. That is more because for me to feel my most confident, I need to feel my healthiest. That is not to say that I'm a certain size, weight, shape, anything like that, but I want to know that I'm looking after myself. So I think in a very similar way to Pilates, a lot of us are drawn to these sorts of things that help us try and focus on bettering ourselves in some way, whatever that looks for ourselves. So for me, yes, I do go to the gym quite frequently, but I also eat a lot of cake and pizza, which is not great considering I have a gluten allergy. But you know,
gluten-free pizza exists.
It's good, I tell you. Pizza Pilgrims, not an ad. Pizza Pilgrims is amazing. If they ever fancy sponsoring me, hit me up. But it's all about balance, and it's all about finding what is correct for you, whatever that might look like.
Well, when we were talking earlier, just before we started recording, something new I learned is that there are many different types of pageants. Not all pageants are created equal. So for example, and I should have known this because when I tell people that I've got a friend that competes in Miss World, Miss Universe, a lot of them being from the fitness world, automatically jump to Miss Universes in the bodybuilding contest, which in fairness, it is the same kind of realm. You're sort of going on stage, in their case only in bikinis and doing the posing, but you're kind of scored on similar, I don't want to say similar, but from my perspective it's a similar thing. You're walking around the stage being judged on how you look, whatever you want to interpret the word look to mean. Maybe you can just clear that up about these different kind of pageants and then which kind of pageants you compete in.
You are 100% right. There are so many pageants, and I think this is the thing that I always say to people. I fully understand that pageantry isn't for everyone. You know, it's pageantry. That word has been around since medieval times, and it's a display. Yes. So
what does it mean? Do you know?
This is where you're testing me. Pageantry it's a display. So pageantry back in medieval times was much more based around knights and going around in their costumes with their, it would be before a joust or part of a joust, and that was a very traditional type of pageantry. And that word has developed and grown and been utilised in different ways throughout history. There's always an element. It's about what you see. but what you see has changed throughout the centuries. And we're now in a position where what you see is about self-worth and self-confidence. And I think I would be remiss to ever say that pageants were not about looks once upon a time, especially the pageants that we know today. I know when I started pageantry, my parents were like, oh my goodness, we used to watch Miss Great Britain at home, and they would put the stats of the girls on the screen. Like, literally, they'd be like, chest 33, waist 25, hips 37. Like, they'd literally put the stats.
Oh, interesting.
It's not like that now. Yes, there is elements of, we go on stage. You know, we go on stage. I do tend to compete in pageants with swimwear rounds. That is a personal choice because I love the empowerment it gives me. But we do go on stage and we are opening ourselves up to judgment. But like you said, there's so many different types. There is everything from, I tend to enter more sort of spokesperson or community-based pageants. So we have strong elements that are about creating projects that change things within our community. And then there are also more modelling ones. You do have ones that are very similar to, if anyone ever watched it, Britain's Top Model on TV, America's Top Model. It was so good.
Not gonna lie, I love that
so toxic, but it was so good. And like
drama, that's why you watched
it. Exactly. There are ones more like that, and they are an option for people if that's what you're wanting to get into. I know that a friend of mine recently entered one that I think she got to walk in New York Fashion Week recently because she was part of this pageant. So there are so many options, and I think that people's experiences with pageants of miscongeniality, which, don't get me wrong,
I was going to ask.
Who doesn't love Sandra Bullock and Michael Caine? Like, it's fantastic, but it does give it gives a good example of what pageantry is like, and I think that's where maybe Pilates and pageantry can be quite similar, that I have a stereotype as someone who's not a Pilates girl of what a Pilates girl is. And, you know, sometimes I'd go, well, Lauren's not that. That's not Lauren. You're not, you know, forgive my naivete or my assumptions, but, you know, for me, Pilates girl is a rich, stuck-up white girl.
Okay.
That's what I would see. That's not to say that that's what it is, but that's what...
Who's saying I'm not that?
I mean, you're definitely...
What are you saying?
Hey, take it as a compliment.
Okay.
I never said you weren't rich. I'm just saying you're not stuck up. Who knows? Maybe you are rich. I've never looked at your bank account, to be perfectly honest with you. But, you know, I know that that's come from pop culture and my assumptions of what they tell me on TV, on Instagram, on all these different things. And it's the same, I know that that's what comes across with pageantry. And that's why these conversations are so important, because we enlighten each other and we learn and we grow as people.
100%. And, you know, earlier we were speaking about how actually there is quite a parallel with the categorization in the Pilates world as well.
Definitely.
So, for example, there are very fitness-based studios. For example, I think an easy one to reference is Strong. Strong Pilates, for anyone who knows it. Again, not ad, not sponsored, I don't work there. But they have literal rowing machines attached to the reformers. So it's obviously, and even the aesthetic is quite sort of, it looks kind of like a gym, even though it is a reformer studio. So that's your really sort of fitness one. Then you've got the really classical studios. A lot of them are quite independent. I actually don't know any chains. There is one, but the name escapes me right now. And that's a little bit more dance studio aesthetic. And then you've got everything in between. And in my experience, I've participated in a couple of classes that maybe resemble the stereotype you listed, but I never actually spoke to those girls. I went to this class, I won't say the name of the studio because the class was actually fantastic. I loved it and I'm thinking of going back, but I showed up in my regular leggings and then I think I had a t-shirt instead of like a Lululemon jacket. And my hair was in a bit of a messy bun and I felt like a homeless person in there. Everyone else had like full face of makeup. Their eyebrows had been microbladed.
And
they
that's
had.
I imagine that's what comes to mind. Like, and I know that's not the case, but that's what you think of. And I'm sure you think of pageant girls as someone in heels and.
Well, I've known you long enough to know it's not the case, but you know, I was kind of thinking, if I join here, do I need to book a blow dry just before the class rather than after it? And again, I actually really loved the class and I didn't speak to any of the women participating, But yeah, I think in terms of the stereotype, that might have fitted more people's expectations, at least of how a Pilates girl looks.
Yes.
At least. One question I feel I really need to ask you for all my listeners, because I know they're asking, and you did kind of mention it. How does a real life pageant actually differ from Miss Congeniality? Specifically, I did have someone earlier ask me, do they still do the talent round?
Oh my god, my evil laugh came out. Aside from the fact that we don't sit and sing on a bus about beauty and grace,
I've forgotten about that bit. It's so
my
good.
favourite as well. I love. We sing it ironically a lot. Don't get me wrong. I think a big part of where things have differed and changed is there isn't the pressure or expectation to look a certain way. I think that there's the pressure and expectation that we all set on ourselves, but I think that transcends a pageant. I think that is societal. But I will say, no, not all pageants have talent rounds. Some do. I'm going to say 99 because I don't know every pageant in the world, and I know that if I say every pageant in the world doesn't make it compulsory, someone's going to sneak in those comments and tell me I'm wrong. But I'm pretty sure every pageant that I'm aware of, talent is not a compulsory measure. Often it's kept in, if a pageant has it in, it's kept in as a token, as like what it used to be. So we will have the option to enter it as a side competition, but it would not count to anything towards our main overall result. They often also have a separate panel of judges as well, so that it doesn't translate through scores. Miss Supranational UK does not have a talent round. Miss Supranational International does, but it is a separate event with separate judges, and it does not cross over or sort of negate or change your score overall in any way. So it's more of just a fun extra for people to do.
A little bit performative if you like doing that.
Yeah, if you like doing that. I mean, we're all going on stage willingly to be judged. I think most of us probably are a little bit performative in some way. You'll find a lot of dancers, singers, people that like to perform, because I mean, we are performing. We're going on stage and we're strutting our stuff in front of sometimes millions of people. But I do think a big part of it is you'll see a lot of diversity. You won't see the diversity in Miss Congeniality because they were perpetuating a stereotype.
Okay.
And you know, that was the point of it, really. Whereas we have a lot more diversity, a lot more doctors and nurses, teachers, you know, women of business involved, you know. It's a much more diverse, not just in the physical, but in our personal lives as well. We are very diverse. There are mothers, women who are married, we have transgender women, we have so many different aspects of womanhood and everything that is brought together to encompass what it is to be a woman and what it is to be female. And I think that, you know, from what I know of you, I'm sure, I know that you're really trying to bring that sort of community aspect into Pilates and into that realm as well. And I think that it's something that when it does happen, it's so beautiful, no matter what community you're in.
Yeah, I find it interesting actually that you seem to find Miss Congeniality as a bad reflection of pageantry, because I always thought that story was quite uplifting, that Sandra Bullock goes in with her misconceptions about pageantry and then goes into it undercover and actually discovered that these women are more than just the body that they're in, and they're competing for good reason, and that's why it's such a beautiful ending, that her friend wins because she's such a good person, even though they're all beautiful.
Absolutely. And I do agree with that, and I think that there is that beautiful element of it, but there's still such a basis on that they are all young, beautiful women, you know, and that for me has always irked me a little bit, that, you know, I'm not saying that if you enter a pageant you're not young and beautiful, please do not get me wrong there, but you know, I'm nearly 30, which is terrifying because that is an age that a lot of women in society are expected to be old, you know.
She says to the 34-year-old.
I'm sorry.
Don't look at me anymore. Someone bring me a Botox needle.
Don't. I've thought about it, and that's a whole other kettle of fish, but that's a society thing. That's not even getting into the pageantry thing. But in society, it's almost expected once you're 30, you retire from anything beautiful or young or whatever you want to call it. You know, it's this expectation that once we're older, we settle down, we have a family, we fall into the background for the younger women to take our place. And I think that where miscongeniality can come across as maybe a negative stereotype is this idea that they are still all very young, very beautiful, almost painted, even when they are doing all these beautiful things, as a little dim. Even when they're doing all these incredible things. My favourite line, what's your favourite date? April 25th.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, true.
I will post something every year on April 25th because Miscongeniality is one of my favourite films, don't get me wrong, but that's not what pageantry is, I have worked with women in pageantry who are coders, who literally go and code for a living. I've worked with neurosurgeons. I've worked with lawyers and doctors. There's so many incredibly strong women. And I think that's the aspect it misses, is that strength that we have. And I think that that's an aspect that society as a whole, and I think the stereotype I have of Pilates misses, is that women are strong. Women are incredible beings. And I won't go into my feminist rant that will take the entirety of a podcast to go into, but I think that there's a strength that's missing from it. And I think there's a lack of physical diversity and age diversity that is not represented in the show.
And the funniest thing as well, in terms of the misconceptions, is that you mention a lot about the women, and we are talking the parallels between pageants and Pilates, so we are sort of speaking more about women, but my class through Allegro Pilates London, we're actually more men.
Really? See,
Yeah.
I would have never have guessed that in a million years.
I can't quite figure out why it is. So many people in London, in the world, but we're based in London and I feel it a lot, are incredibly lonely. And I think it's very hard for men in particular to find spaces that they're welcomed, especially spaces that have a lot of females in them. There can be a lot of labelling around that.
Yeah, and actually, there are male pageants as well, and that's actually something I'll hold my hands up to. I'm sometimes really bad at remembering that, and that there is a space, and I'm sorry for all and everyone who is watching that may be a male pageant fan or compete in them. Like, they are there, they do exist. I think that in the same way as Pilates, like, I don't think that people think about it, because we don't think about that, and that in itself is probably another podcast or two we could sit here and chat, because I know what we're like. We talk forever.
Stereotype that more women do Pilates is still very true. So talking about the stereotypes, just rewinding it a little bit back to pageants and Pilates, are there actually many pageant girls that do Pilates? Because we've drawn quite a few parallels. It seems like those worlds are quite intersected and fit the same kind of stereotype.
I mean, I do see it on my Instagram feed a lot. I don't know if that's just you at this point, but it might be. No, I do think that a lot of pageant girls do end up in Pilates, because it is a safe space. It is somewhere that we feel safe and, accepted. And I think that is also because, like you say, community is such a big part of Pilates, or certainly your Pilates. It is a big thing. And like I sort of mentioned at the beginning when we were talking about fitness, a lot of us do value our health, and we do value the feelings we get when we do exercise, how we feel, the endorphin rush, so to speak. We're all endorphin and adrenaline junkies. We enjoy standing on stage and be like, I'll keep saying this, we are paying people to judge us, that's what we're doing. So, if we like that kind of adrenaline endorphin rush, something like Pilates and exercise that gives a very similar rush is probably going to be very liked by those kinds of people.
So something I'd considered regarding to that is perhaps there is this massive association between Pilates and posture and poise and grace, going a lot back to its roots, or perhaps not its roots, but its history in dancing, or connected to dancing. Yes. So I wonder if pageant girls were doing Pilates, I wonder if it's more coincidental in a sense that they're looking for this certain aesthetic in terms of lines, postures, alignments, grace, or if it's more so the lifestyle, because nowadays I feel Pilates has become not just an exercise regime, but it's a lifestyle
Yes.
associated with matcha lattes, Lululemon, maybe like a little white dog. I am the Pilates stereotype.
Are you here?
I'm just like listing these things like, wait, I am such the stereotype.
I mean, I'm not far off, and I don't even do Pilates, and I've got a small white dog. I've got an iced latte every day. But no, I think there is an element of, you know, something that is very similar with pageants and Pilates is our sort of connections back to dance. You know, there is a lot of elegance and grace and poise and posture. You will find, you know, even the traditional, if you're into pageants at all, or if you've ever competed, you may have heard of the term a T-pose, which is where your legs, your feet are stood in a T-pose. It's basically a fifth or a third position in dance. No, that's third position. That is a dance position, and that is a position in pageantry. There's a lot of parallels. So I think, you know, we gravitate more towards those things that are comforting and similar. You know, yet again, humans like similarity, and can you tell I have studied biology for so many years when I keep going back to evolution, but it's true, we seek comfort in that we know. So to know that we have that option of something that focuses on areas that we already focus on in our day-to-day lives, I think that that's probably maybe quite subconsciously, like, we're thinking, Pilates looks similar, so maybe I should start coming to your Pilates sessions going, who wants to join a pageant? And
Get all the guys.
I could do it. I tell you, give me 5 minutes, we could get you going to a pageant. Let's go. You know?
I mean, you got me to watch your online ones at least through COVID.
I'm still working on you. I can get you on a pageant as of yet. Give me time. I'm watching you.
So, you know, something I was thinking about is how both Pilates and pageants do have this really specific aesthetic attached to them that we just spoke about. It's about being tall, toned, perfect posture, and in Pilates about that long, lean body. Have you noticed that crossover of these stereotypes, and are they something you would deem to be true?
Absolutely. I think there are definite stereotypes attached that are very, very similar. I will point out, I'm 5'5". I am in no way tall. You know, we have everything. I've competed with women that are 4'9", and I've competed with women that are 6'2". I have competed with every type of woman you could think of. And I think that I always do say, you know, stereotypes come from somewhere. But I do think that those stereotypes and where they have come from has come from archaic views. I think that pageantry has evolved. It is not about how a woman looks. We are not on a meat market for men to pick up and marry anymore. You know, it's 2025. Maybe that's where I'm going wrong. No, but you know, we're not there to please men. And you'll find sort of very similarly actually to Pilates, you'll go into a pageant competition. Obviously, in the competitions I enter, they are all female most of the time. But all the contestants are female. But, you know, we then look out into the audience. 80% of that crowd is going to be women. We're all there to support women. That 20% is probably the husbands, fathers, brothers, boyfriends, people that have been dragged along.
I was about to say.
Like, it's not...
Did they want to come?
I mean, I think they always want to... maybe I should ask my fiancé what he thinks about that one. No, they do. You'd hope they want to come if they're coming. It's all women supporting women, or it's people coming to support the women that they're here for. And we cheer everyone that goes on stage. You're stood at the back of the pageant, you know, back at the stage at a pageant, and we're all cheering each other. The crowd's all cheering every woman that walks on the stage. And I think, you know, in a way that's, you are the crowd as the instructor for a Pilates studio. You're the crowd. You're cheering on each person. You're getting them to be the best version of themselves. You know, so yes, there are stereotypes. Do I think they're accurate in this day and age? No. I think that they are very outdated, and they are a very, unfortunately, misogynistic mindset.
Okay. So what if I asked you about plus sized in terms of
this was coming.
in terms of this socially accepted perfect body image,
Yes.
of being long, lean, poised, toned, etc. How often do you notice body types that veer out of that frame, and how many of those women are plus sized in your pageants that you compete in?
I think I want to start this answer by prefacing the fact that this is an area that I haven't had any personal experience in, with the sense that I'm not plus size. So I'm going specifically from my view as an outsider from that group, and I want to be very clear that I in no way speak for the community of plus size women in pageantry. I am an ally, but I want to be very clear that this is only what my experiences are, and if anyone has had different experiences, I would be fascinated in the comments to know, because everyone has different experiences. From my personal experiences, I think that certainly within the UK pageant scene, we are so accepting and so diverse, and it is one of the things that makes me keep going back. I can meet women who are, what you would consider traditionally plus sized or traditionally tiny. You meet everyone in between. You meet the women with the six pack, you meet the women with the curves, you meet them with the big boobs, the big bum. You get every combination of women out there. And that is what is so beautiful in the UK pageant scene. When you are out there on that stage watching them walk on, you realize this is not just women on a stage. It is the expression of women and females in the UK and every variety that we have. I have never personally witnessed or been part of, and never would be, but I have never personally witnessed any negativity towards any size of woman on a pageant stage or within the pageant community.
So all of that being said, do you notice a lot of women who veer from the standard, conventional, desired, inverted commas, body type competing? And I do want to speak specifically in this respect with plus-sized women.
Absolutely.
Do you see a lot of plus-sized women competing? And if not, why not?
I do see plus-size women competing. I personally don't think it's enough. Like, we don't see enough of it yet. I think a big part of that is that it's only in the last sort of decade or so that and yet again, I'm speaking from the experiences I've had speaking to women of plus size category, that they've felt that they've had the space and the safety to do so. And that's a detriment on our part, on everyone else's part that is not part of that community. We've not made them feel safe within our community as a whole. And that is something that I strive every day personally to do better at. I think that that's something we can always continue to grow. And I think that we do see plus size women. It's becoming a lot more normalized within pageantry, and I think within society. Like, we are, although we might be still judging in a way that I'm not comfortable with and I wish we could change, and this is society I'm talking about, not pageantry. I don't know why I'm pointing at you. You are not society.
I am society.
You are society, darling.
I am society.
I'm sorry, Anna Delvey, is that you? But I think we do, as a whole, we are moving towards a more accepting society. But I do think that takes time, and unfortunately that also requires plus size women to be brave enough to step in onto the stage in the first place and carve the way for other people. And I think that stands with anything that's different. Yet again, it's that going back to the different from the norm, or what society deems as norm.
So given it is quite inclusive, and what I see from pageants is in what people do, it is walking on stage in different outfits. And then, of course, you do have the interview, and you did mention that you enter spokesperson types of pageants. Yes. However, when it comes to the bikini round and the evening gown or evening wear round, is that what it's called? Yeah. How is that actually judged?
So, I will circle back a little bit first with starting with the interview round, because I think it's important to always focus on this bit. That for the majority of UK-based pageants, yet again, every country or every individual pageant will be judged differently, but I only really have the expertise of the UK-based pageants. We often have a higher than usual percentage of interview-based points. So it is becoming more and more common for interview to take up over 50% of your overall score. So immediately you are being judged on your brain, not your face. For some pageants, including Miss Supranational UK, we are actually judged blind, so we are behind a screen. They do not see us. Nothing is taken into account whilst we are talking about interview, and that includes talking about, we have a designated time to talk about our projects that we do. So, you know, we immediately are taking out any aesthetic when it comes to interview, which is obviously something that, I mean, don't get me wrong, I will go dressed up to the nines because that's how I feel confident. I always say, you know, when I'm stressed or I'm nervous, because I'll put more hair and makeup on because it's like my armour. But that's my choice, you know, it doesn't matter, it will make no difference to my points. When it comes to the on-stage rounds, however, obviously you can't hide on stage. You can't put a panel up and hide the judges from you on stage. It defeats the point. But a lot of pageants will have different ways to, I don't want to say negate it, because we're not negating anything yet. Again, we are choosing to do this, but we'll have different ways to make sure that it is inclusive, fair, and more realistic of women in the 21st century. For example, Miss Supranational UK, we have a confidence round, not a bikini round. So our round is based off of confidence. We are asked to wear either fitness gear, sportswear, I think bikinis or swimsuits, anything that we feel confident in that shows who we are as a person. We do have other pageants that I've been part of that the bikini or swimwear round was optional, but a very, very common thing you'll find is it's fitness or swim rather than bikini, unless you enter a bikini-based pageant. Different situation there. But what they will all have in common is that they are all based on confidence and stage presence.
How do you measure confidence?
Oh, you love these hard questions, don't you? Confidence is something that is different to everyone. And, you know, don't get me wrong, that's very difficult to necessarily put a pin in it. For myself, I think confidence is someone who stands on stage with a sparkle in her eye, her chin held high, and stood there going, this is me. Yes, you know, this is who I am. Like it or leave it, but this is me. That to me is true confidence and true self-worth.
I've never really seen confidence as something that someone can measure and score, because in myself, I'm incredibly good at faking it. I've learned to do that from my job, but even when I'm teaching, I can be incredibly insecure. I just switch it off for the moment, but sometimes afterwards I'll be like, oh, I hope they liked me. I hope that was a good class. I hope everyone liked it. I hope everyone feels good, which I wouldn't necessarily deem as confidence.
But wouldn't you, in that moment, you were confident? Whether you are not afterwards is a whole other kettle of fish, but in that moment, you were confident.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely fluctuate because I get quite a lot of good reviews. I work at some really nice studios that wouldn't have me there if I wasn't good at what I do. I've been to teachers' class who remind me of what not to do. But then I've also occasionally been to teachers' classes who I think, oh my goodness, I'm just a little baby in this industry. But it really goes up and down. But I know for a fact that in my work, I have to go in on my good days and my bad. And maybe people who know me very well can see me on my bad days. On my bad days, I'm far less engaged with people. I'm kind of just trying to keep the class on track. And I'm not wanting to share myself as much because I'm insecure about that self that day. But then on other days, I'll be fully engaging, making jokes, but I know what's going on. I don't know if my participants always notice, so I don't know how it's, I find it challenging to understand how someone can really know if someone's confident.
I think I see where you mean, but isn't that what confidence is I don't think confidence is always feeling 100%. It's knowing what your strengths are and going with it anyway. You
That's a
know,
very good point.
That's how I've always seen it. Like, I'll take, you know, we mentioned that I competed at Miss Earth internationally. I represented the UK. That was during the global pandemic. I was laid off during that time. I had a 93-year-old grandma who was a highly, you know, in the danger zone for COVID. I had nothing to do except wallow in self-pity and fear and, you know, scroll TikTok. You know, I was not necessarily mentally in a good place. But I took that and I took who I was in that moment and presented the best that I could be. And that is the confidence. The confidence in going, okay, I'm not 100%. I'm not great. It's not been a great day. But I'm going to show up and give you what I can. You know, I'm confident in what I can give. You know, whatever that may be. And I always say, you know, confidence also takes different forms. You don't have to be, I know I'm a very loud, over-the-top person, but you don't have to be. You know, one of my closest friends that I met through pageantry, she is one of the emblems of quiet confidence. She just walks into a room, she doesn't say anything. She's a very quiet person, but you just know she's secure in herself. So, or secure in herself in that moment, we should say, because you never truly know what's going on in someone's mind, like you say.
I suppose it's also quite contextual as
Absolutely.
well. So the better you get at something, the more you raise your own bar.
100%.
There's this continual, perpetual kind of desire for growth. But at the same time, it can be really difficult to remember how much you've grown when you're continuously trying to get better. Because if I think about where I was 10 years ago, I might have actually said I was more confident because I didn't know how big the world was and how far I could get into it.
Ignorance
and now
is bliss.
that I'm getting higher and higher and I'm like, oh my goodness, I don't know anything of what I'm doing. I'm not a Pilates girl. I feel like an imposter. Like imposter syndrome. I see these beautiful women around me and I sort of think, oh my goodness, I'm such an imposter in this world.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that that's true of anyone in any capacity. You know, I don't even think that's limited to pageants or Pilates. That's life. But it's about what we do in the communities that we're in to help overcome that. And I think that, you know, like you say, Pilates, you are creating these spaces for people to enjoy that and to enjoy who they are. And pageantry is doing the same. We're finding these spaces where we can be authentic and be true to ourselves and be celebrated for it. You know, we can celebrate who we are, confidence and all. And that is, you know, a hard thing, particularly in a world, which I won't go into too much detail, but a world of social media and everything. It's important to make sure that we're grounding ourselves.
The only other aspect I wanted to bring up about looks, there is an association in society that beauty requires youth. A lot of pageants, if not all that I've seen, seem to have an upper age limit, starting with the younger ones around 30 and the older ones around 40. And there are a few that seem to not have an age limit, but it doesn't seem to be the norm from my own research. What would you say to that in terms of pageantry and beauty standards?
I'd say in terms of pageantry and age limits, there needs to be a change, 100%. And I'm not afraid to admit when a community that I'm part of needs to better themselves. And I think this is an area that we are changing, we are developing. Do I think it's at an appropriate pace yet? Maybe not. But there is movement, and I'm having to really remind myself that there is movement. So, for example, there are some pageants. Miss Universe is a very good one. They were the first one to ever remove any form of upper age limit. There were women competing last year in the 80s, which was amazing.
I'd love to see that.
Do you know how hard I was like, Mum, compete in Miss Universe with me. She was like, absolutely not, Ella. And I was like, oh.
Well, but good to know there's still hope for me.
Absolutely, girl. You can walk that Miss Universe stage. Yeah, Miss Universe Great Britain right there. Absolutely.
It's not the right time, but at least I can compete when I'm 80.
Exactly.
So I can save it for later.
Exactly. But, you know, Miss Universe, I think, has really set the standard for that. They were the first ones to really make those changes. And I think, unfortunately, it stems from the older categorization of women. And it's a much more societal issue. There's only really, I think, probably been in the last 20 years or so that that's really changed. And I think it's taking a hot minute for pageantry to fully catch up. There are still some pageants, you know, I will hold our hands up where we're doing wrong. There are some pageants where the upper age limit for a miss is 26, which is not acceptable, I don't think, in this day and age at all.
Yeah.
And, you know, we do still have some pageants that if you are married, you have to enter the Mrs. pageant system.
Does it? I don't know. Maybe it makes sense because you are a Mrs.
it makes sense in the fact that you're all misses, but the reason originally, and I don't speak for all pageants, but I know some pageants used to state that it was because you wouldn't be able to commit in the same way, because your expectation was to be a mother.
Oh,
So
interesting.
you were a mother. That has changed, but the runoff of having these pageants for misses hasn't. So, you know, it's not a negative now, but it may have stemmed from negative connotations once upon a time. You know, so once upon a time, that was our duty. We were expected as women. It was weird as women, which I do not agree with. You know, full disclosure, I do not want kids. That is not my lot in life. My lot in life is to cause havoc until the day I die.
I can just see you in Selfridges or something, just trying on putting on a full face of makeup, trying on all the products,
of course.
and then just showing everyone, like, don't buy them here, you can get them cheaper somewhere else.
Absolutely. If there's a bargain, I'll find it, I'll tell you that much. But, you know, that was what society expected of us. Yeah. So these negative connotations have kind of continued on without the negative connotation, if that makes sense. But, you know, there is now many pageants that you can be married, you can have children. That is becoming more normal. It's just taking time for some of these to catch up. And I do think that needs to happen quicker. There is change happening, and we have to accept that we are changing. For most women, your life starts at 29, 30 now. You know, what do they
better do?
What's the new phrase that I keep hearing now? I'm nearing my 30s. Is the 30s is like your 20s, but with money. You know, women are having children later. We are creating businesses. We are starting new adventures later and later in life. We are going to university. We are doing all these things. But, you know, we are changing. We're growing. And some things need to happen quicker, but it's not to say that they're not happening at all.
In terms of the age disparity, in Pilates, I've not noticed an age disparity, but more of an age segregation in that it's not intentional, and I think it might come down to marketing, because there are several forms of Pilates, and some people's mind when they think of Pilates goes to Pilates princesses with their matcha lattes. But other people, they think of senior citizens doing it at the old folks' home.
Yeah.
That's another connotation. And it does resemble that in the real world to a degree, in that I see old people and I see young people doing it, but often not in the same place.
Yes.
But I don't think in Pilates that's necessarily a bad thing. I think it should be definitely that everyone is welcomed everywhere. However, it is biology, physiology. The bones degenerate over time. If you are older and haven't worked out intensively through your whole life, because a lot of people get into Pilates as elderly people because they want the lower impact, because their bodies are fragile. And it makes sense to have different spaces for that goal versus 25-year-old runs 3 times a week and wants to do Pilates on the side to aid with that running.
But then could we not be looking at it more as a moving away from age ranges but more long-term goals?
100%. I think it's just more that they both naturally fall into that category.
Absolutely.
So it makes sense for a studio, if they are really fitness, pushing yourself, HIIT style based, to market to their key demographic, which is going to be, at one of my studios are age 25 to 40. And then at another studio, it's a slightly larger age range because it's a local studio. So it's not near offices, it's more in a living area, and it's all the local community. So you do get all the age ranges, but actually in that studio, something they do really well is they separate the classes by type of class, not just by level, but they've got their fitness classes, they've got their cardio classes, they've got their more sort of yoga style classes. All of it is still Pilates, but in terms of intensity, the style of exercises and the focus, they actually categorize. So I think there you do get more of a mix.
Absolutely, and I think that's maybe where pageantry and Pilates are quite similar in ways that we have different types of pageants. We have our spokeswoman pageants, we have our fitness-based pageants, we have our community-based pageants, charity pageant. It's a similar thing, but and I think that something that both communities should keeping in mind is that just because you've got a certain focus doesn't negate any age range or any type, whether that's age, body type, I think to an extent gender as well. You know, there's so many different things that I think that it should be solely focused on what we're trying to get out of it, not necessarily what's being put into it, if that makes sense.
So with that being said, do you see a day in the future where you have 25-year-olds competing in the same category as an 80-year-old?
Absolutely, I'd love it. 100%, I'd be right down for that. I mean, when I did Miss Universe Great Britain last year, our youngest competitor was 18, our oldest was 52.
Oh, lovely.
And that was in 1/8. That was the first year of these major changes in age ranges, and we had that much of a range of ages already. So, and that's with the first year of it. So I'm certain this is going to snowball, and we are going to see a real community based on true passion, not on segregation.
Another obstacle I see in, for sure, Pilates, and my impression is with pageantry as well, is the financial aspect. I looked up the fees and they seem to vary from relatively cheap, so about £25 to about £250 for the entry fee, which, you know, pretty much anyone, if they work a little bit of overtime, can do. But then it's all the other stuff on top. So the traveling around, the outfits, the camera equipment. You do a lot of social media and promoting and getting yourself around. Would you say that finances are an obstacle to competing in pageants?
I think finances, or what you spend in pageantry, is whatever you want it to be. I will also say, full disclosure, I have entered a pageant that had an entry fee of £700. And I think it's very important to be very open with that and to admit that, you know, they can be very expensive events. When I first entered pageantry, I had no idea what a pageant was. I was just like, yeah, why not? You know, I was young. I thought, why not? And my big thing was that I wasn't going to spend much money at all. I was like, I was at university. I had nothing. I was eating noodles, you know, like 90% of the time. So I couldn't afford to do any of that. I couldn't afford to be spending £500 on a dress. So what I did is I found people who were willing to sponsor me in return for various services. So I worked with a local gym of mine because I'm big into my fitness. It's a personal passion of mine. I became a rep for the gym, and in return they sponsored my entry fee. So that was one way that I went to it. I also work a lot of the time, and you know, you don't have to have massive followings. I don't have a big TikTok or Instagram following. I'm not an influencer. I just talk to the local communities that can help me, you know, and that I can help them in return. I talked to a local dress boutique who was willing to sponsor me a dress in return for being in some of their social media. You know, there are so many ways to do it. And if you don't, Vinted is phenomenal. Like, Vinted and Depop are my best friend. Charity shops. I buy so much of my stuff from charity shops. I mean, even this was a TK Maxx find. This was like $7.99 in its Bershka. Like, you know, this would have been, what, 60 quid in the shop? This cost me £8. You just have to be a bit more resourceful. But I don't think it doesn't have to be a barrier. It can, and if someone is wanting to enter pageants and struggling with it, please DM me. Like, I'll help you. And I think that probably actually your stereotypes of what the financial aspects of pageantry are like probably quite similar to my stereotypes and assumptions of Pilates, because in my mind I think of Rebel One Fitness, where it's like, what, £70 a lesson or whatever it is. That's what I imagine.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that's probably not the case, but if you'd asked me about Pilates, that would be the case. Is that the case?
With Reformer, unlike Mat Pilates, where to an extent you can have as many people as you want in the room and there's very little equipment, Reformer, you're limited to the amount of people you can have in the room. And ultimately, Reformer Pilates studios, they're not charities and they have to make money. And there's a lot of costs incurred in that. Now, I don't run a Reformer studio, so I haven't seen the accounts, but I've done like a little bit of loose maths in my head. And you really have to be at 60% occupancy to make any form of kind of money out of it. Once you've paid your overheads, your instructors, marketing, things like that, and it's a competitive industry in London, then the price they're selling, especially if you buy the packages, is the price they can afford to sell it at. Of course, it's expensive for a one-off drop-in because they want to encourage you to buy more, because that creates obviously more stability for them and also more consistency for you. You're going to actually get better by doing it a lot. You're not going to wake up one day, do one Reformer class and get lean and toned and confident, whatever your goals might be. Same way that if you eat one pizza, you're not going to wake up obese with a heart condition the next day. You know what I mean? So it is a matter, if you commit to it, it will work out cheaper in the long run. But since it's not a charity, it's a business, they do need to charge what they're charging. The only argument I can see for getting it cheaper is having larger studios with more reformers. There would still be the need to cover the instructor cost and the cost of the reformers, so it'd probably be a little bit more expensive than that. But it might not need to be as expensive as it is. And things like Virgin and Third Space, if you buy the membership to the gym, which I think Virgin is a little over £100, you get to go to the classes an unlimited amount of times.
So are you saying then that there is some level of socioeconomic boundary for...
There is a barrier for reformer right now, because if you aren't on a high income, especially in London, it's probably not in your budget. However, what I would say is a lot of the benefits, physical benefits of reformer, if you know what you're doing, and this is what I'm trying to do a little bit with my online stuff, is bridge that barrier into being able to do reformer stuff at the gym. And this isn't only for people with a financial barrier, it is for people with travel barriers. Maybe they're away for 2 weeks and want to get something done, there's no reformer studios near. Or there's the barrier of location, in that a lot of countryside towns and villages don't have reformer studios, but most places have a gym. In terms of the lifestyle around Pilates, that is really expensive, and that I think is a little bit ridiculous. You do not need to wear Lululemons to all your classes. I freaking love Lululemon. But you can come in with your Decathlon own brand leggings and get just as good of a workout and be just as confident and get the benefits. You do not need to surround yourself with a Pilates lifestyle. But reformer in particular is expensive. And I've seen mat classes that I think are ridiculously overpriced, but that's just because it's the market price. Some mat classes I think are very much overpriced, but then it depends what you're getting for that, because if you are paying £30 for a mat class, but it's 3 or 4 of you in the class, then that's not bad of a deal. That's almost like a private session, and for a cheap personal trainer, you'd look at around £30 or £40. For an expensive personal trainer, you'd pay a lot more.
Definitely food for thought.
Exactly. I thought to tie everything together, I could ask you a few interview questions.
Okay.
But this is for my imaginary pageant that I created just for this podcast episode called Miss Pilates UK.
Love that.
There is nothing like this out there. That is a lie. There are actually Pilates contests in Asia, but it's very much more like a gymnastics kind of style thing. Wow. They do not have interview rounds. But I've created you a little quick fire interview round here.
Let's do it. Come on.
So I know that you have done Pilates before. I know that you're not a massive Pilates girl, but you have done Pilates sessions before. So we're going to go off the back to interlace everything together. What is the most important lesson Pilates has taught you, and how would you use that lesson to inspire others?
Pilates has definitely taught me the importance of patience and perseverance. By continuing to push yourself forward, you know that you are going to get better. That doesn't mean it's going to happen overnight, but it does happen. I've taken that and developed that into my daily life of just because I don't get something right first time doesn't mean it can't happen again. And I know that that in turn is going to make me a much more well-rounded and confident person.
If you could choose one Pilates exercise to represent your personality, what would it be and why?
I think I would choose boomerang because I keep coming back for more. I think for me, it's that similarity of perseverance and determination that, you know, by keep coming back and keep continuing to work on whatever it is you do, that is what makes you great. That is what builds your confidence and your self-esteem. And I think whether you put it to Pilates, to pageantry, to life, that is how you grow, is keep coming back for more and just get right back up and do it again.
Final one. So the big finish, we're going to tie together Pilates and pageantry in a very cliche way. How do you see Pilates contributing to world peace?
Okay. There are so many different ways that Pilates can really work towards world peace, and I think a big one is community, of bringing people together and ensuring that we have somewhere to truly be authentic to ourselves. That is what allows people and society to flourish and grow, is being allowed to be true to ourselves, whether that is through Pilates, pageantry, what we do on the weekend, what we eat, being allowed, and not just allowed but encouraged to be who we are and to delve into our uniqueness. That is what will truly bring peace to society and eventually, hopefully, one day to the world.
I'm very happy with your answers. So Ella, given those answers, you're going to get 100 out of 100 for Miss Pilates scoring UK. I'm now going to crown you Miss Pilates
Oh my god, this is amazing!
UK.
Oh my gosh.
The first one ever. Maybe this can be an annual thing.
Oh my god, I'll help you set it up. I'll do it.
Do you want me to-
Thank you. Thank you.
Beautiful.
Oh my god, this is amazing.
You get extra points for the wave as well.
Thank you.
Okay, so before we finish, I've actually got a fun fact about the world peace thing.
Oh.
So in the book Caged Lion, it is a book written by John Steele, who was one of Joseph Pilates' protégés, first ever students. There's a conversation between himself and Joseph Pilates about world peace. And Joseph Pilates did actually believe that Pilates would bring world peace, but maybe not in the way you'd think.
Oh.
So he had developed a lot of exercises that he thought would make women better at certain things. And he thought if women were better at that, men would be happier and start fewer wars. So I think your answer was better and definitely more appropriate. But that is just my fun little fact for you.
Not sure how I feel about that fact. I mean, it's interesting, don't get me wrong.
I'm not what's the word? I'm not claiming the benefits to be or not be that. However, if you read the book Caged Lion, if anyone's interested, it's such a good read, whether you're into Pilates or not. Like, it is stated in there. Before we wrap up, Ella, tell our listeners if they want to follow your pageant journey or how to support you, where they can find you.
Absolutely. So if you'd like to follow my individual pageant journey, I am easy to find on Instagram or TikTok, both with the same username, Miss Ella Lou, and you can follow me all on there, and I will keep you updated. I will share what pageants I'm entering, and if you just want to slide into my DMs and ask any questions about pageants, or if you want to know more about how to get into them, just let me know. I'm here and happy to chat. I love encouraging new people into the industry and hopefully supporting you guys on your pageant journey as well.
Thank you. Well, thank you ever so much for being here.
Me.
And for all you listening, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and maybe even practice your pageant wave at my next Pilates class. Thank you for tuning in, and catch you next time.